Hey everybody, thank you very much for tuning in to Forecasting with Friends here on Fox Local. I'm Chief Meteorologist Mike Iscovitz. No friends with me today, but that's okay. We do have Allison joining us in a few minutes with a really interesting interview. But look, I know the first thing on everybody's mind is I keep hearing about snow, keep hearing about ice, all this cold weather. Why can't we figure this stuff out? Well, we're looking still ahead. So today's Thursday, right? Thursday morning. We've still got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday before any precipitation enters the picture as far as snow or ice. So we're really looking at like 120 hours from now, which the computer models are still going to be going back and forth on, and they've been doing that. So I want to show you a comparison here. So we have our two primary models that go this far out are going to be the American GFS and the European model. You hear us talk about these all the time during hurricane season, right? And sometimes they'll waver, you know, and one will show a storm going to the east and one will go into the west. So you know the whole deal during hurricane season, how they kind of waver back and forth sometimes. And what we look for is consensus. We like to see that spaghetti model, you know, close together. Well, in the wintertime, the same kind of thing can happen. And they've been going back and forth on both temperatures and precipitation. I'll tell you that one thing that I'm, almost certain of is it's going to get very, very cold next week. And we're probably going to have at least 2 mornings, probably 3 or even 4 with freezing temperatures in a row, beginning on Monday morning. What is very uncertain right now is the amount of precipitation. The GFS model on the right has been trending to the south with mostly rain. And this is the latest full European model, but I'll tell you the frame by frame of the new Euro is coming out right now. And last time I took a look, they've actually also begun to back off a little bit with the precipitation. So one of the tricks here, as this sort of blob of purple comes down from the north, which is that polar air, one of the tricks is how thick is the layer of cold air going to be? If you have a thicker cold air layer in Texas, then that could lead to snow. If you have a really thin layer, then you're talking about ice, and ice is never a good thing, right? It's very dangerous. Let me walk you through low temperatures here over the next 3 nights. So tonight we're looking for a low of about 45. Tomorrow night about 55 as a front comes in, and then look at this plunge in temperatures. Saturday night getting down to the middle 30s here, so that means marathon morning, maybe upper 30s, and down to about 12 in Amarillo. And that's just the beginning of the cold air that is coming our way. So obviously with this cold air coming in, with the chance for icing, folks are asking the question, will our state's power grid be ready to handle it? Well, Meredith Aldis with our sister station in Austin sat down with an energy expert who says there might be a reason to worry.
If you lived in Texas in 2021, you remember it was one of the most dangerous winter storms in Texas history. ERCOT, the state's power grid, failed, leaving many homes and businesses without heat for more than 3 days.
Here we are 4 years later. The grid's not fixed, and everybody's worried about the polar vortex coming next week.
It's a scenario no one wants to relive, but could it happen again?
As a point of reference, we have added more than 10,000 megawatts of new generation just this year since the last winter. And so we've got more supply on the grid than we ever have had before.
Energy expert Ed Hurst says it isn't enough.
And at this point in the game, demand on a winter's night is going to exceed what can be supplied.
And he says the grid is more fragile now than back then.
We've had many more people move to Texas, a lot more business. Demand is growing. All of the power plants are now roughly 4.5 years older than they were. They're prone to breaking down.
Last year, Fox 7 reported several Austin Energy outages linked to problems with equipment. In April, a storm knocked down power lines. In August, a fail-safe sensor tripped because of high heat. In September, a fire broke out in a transformer.
We never want equipment to fail. Obviously, with millions of pieces of equipment across our service territory from time to time, that will happen. What we do is we run systems checks on our circuits to make sure that everything is working properly. If there's something that appears wrong or amiss, or we're getting fluctuations in performance, we go and check that out immediately to make sure that there's not something faulty there.
Matt Mitchell with Austin Energy says the power plants are weatherized and crews are prepared.
If there's an outage, we've got what we need to restore that power as quickly and safely as possible.
I sure hope so, because it's going to get a bit of a test, obviously, next week. All right, so you remember that commercial? I think it was Southwest Airlines, want to get away? Well, when the weather gets really cold, you might want to get away. And Allison Gargaro is going to be up next with a really interesting interview that'll give you a pretty fancy reason to get away. So stay tuned for that.
Welcome back to Forecasting with Friends, everyone. We talk about weather mainly in the United States, but not everybody gets the chance to see weather on different continents with your family. And that's where we bring in a very special guest. We have Christiane Klein, who is on a trip right now, currently traveling back to Australia. But you, your husband, and your daughter are going on this once-of-a-lifetime trip. So can you just talk to me about how this all started?
Yeah, it started as a vacation that kind of went out of control. We were looking to have this vacation that we were going to profile on our website, which is foodfamilytravel.com. And everything looked like it was going to be so short. When you're talking about a 2-week vacation and you start having travel plans and you deal with jet lag, it feels like 7 days, right? So I started thinking I'm no longer in a newsroom every day. My husband and I are both remote workers. We have our own firm and we homeschool our daughter. So what if we extended that vacation and then worked aboard a ship and worked remotely on those days at sea and then had these amazing adventures on those days that we were in port? And so I reached out to Regent Seven Seas Cruises and asked them, is this something that's possible? Can we really work remotely? And is the internet good enough to be able to do this? And, here we are talking via Zoom. And they hopped on board and said, absolutely. And here we are on the Explorer. We are in week 3 now. So we've made our way around New Zealand. We went to the International Antarctic Center. It was amazing. We are headed back now to Australia. So we are right now in the middle of the Tasman Sea, somewhere above Antarctica, in between New Zealand and Australia.
It just gives me the chills. You even saying that, like, that is so cool. Antarctica.
I know. It's so crazy too, because so much of this has been discovery for us. We've never been to any of these places before. And how often can you have that experience with your child you're so used to as a parent, showing them things that are important to you and having those experiences where you relive them through their eyes? We're all experiencing this for the first time. And so we'll see these ships because this is summer down here, right? It's very interesting. We have sunsets that start around 10 o'clock at night because we're so close to the South Pole. They have the Aurora Australis, which I didn't even know that we could potentially see when we got on board. That's the Southern Lights here. And we'll see these ships passing every once in a while that are red. And those are the ships that go and carry people to Antarctica, and they have to be red so you can actually see them because everything else is covered in snow and ice. So it's all of these interesting educational experiences that we weren't even planned for outside of our shore excursions and our adventures that we were sort of planned for. It's just been amazing.
That is so cool. So obviously you're learning a lot about culture, but what have you learned about weather? Because you're going from, yes, it's summer down there, but the areas that you're going into may be a little bit colder, but then you said soon going into a tropical rainforest.
Yeah, so, we went through a temperate rainforest in New Zealand, and that's very different than what we typically would think of as a tropical rainforest. Looks very different, looked similar to some of the redwood trees and some of the forests that you would see in parts of California. And what was so fascinating to me is New Zealand is very, very protective, and they should be, of their flora and fauna. But pre-1900s, a lot of people brought different types of plants to that area. And so you would see California pines, different types of California plants that are native to California growing wild now in New Zealand because they were brought there in the 1800s. And one of the most interesting parts about going through that rainforest is we would see these giant pines that would take 60, 70, 80 years to reach maturity in the States. Because it's volcanic soil, it actually reaches maturity in like 20 years. So things just take off growing there. And it's so fascinating because in similar ways to Hawaii, there's so many different types of microclimates and different types of areas just around those islands around New Zealand. So it's been just fascinating seeing how things grow in different areas. Fascinating to experience different types of weather. I mean, it's so close to Antarctica, you don't necessarily think about that, but the US has our base for expeditions and for scientific research in Christchurch, New Zealand. That's where they leave from, and other countries too, South Korea, Italy, of course, New Zealand. So it's just been really kind of an interesting experience to follow along and learn. And then, not to mention all the things that we learn daily about different types of wildlife. My daughter's the first one to ask all these questions on these tours, and she's 6 years old, and she's asking about, the gestation cycle of a blue penguin and how long they live and do they mate for life. And it's fabulous to watch that happen as well as a mom, to see her have that spark of interest and curiosity and learning, because for us, that's such a big part of why we wanted to take this trip.
Well, that is so cool. And penguins, right when you say where you are, that was the first animal I thought of. So obviously you've seen them in the wild, but have there been areas where maybe you've gotten to get a little bit closer?
Yes, we've toured so many sanctuaries, and one of my favorite places on earth, we loved it so much that we actually canceled another tour to go back, is Nature's Wonders in Dunedin, New Zealand. If anyone is close to this place, you have to go. I feel very strongly about it. It's been the same family that's owned this land in, I think it's 650 acres of gorgeous coastline in New Zealand for hundreds of years. And there are fur seals, and we got video of fur seals nursing their pups on the beach. They're right next to us, and they're so used to not being touched. You do not touch, you observe, you do not disturb, that they're comfortable with humans, and they see that we are not going to harm them. So we would have these experiences where you could see them in the wild. You saw actual behavior of these animals that you would never have another opportunity to see. And they had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of blue penguins. Those are the tiniest penguins in the world. But this particular time of year is also their nesting season. So we went there 2 different times, about 10 days apart. That first visit, we could see all of these blue penguins in the nest in their burrow with their chicks. And the next time we came back, the chicks were already trying to go out to sea. So they had moved on. And then we would still see some of the penguins that were still on eggs that were waiting to hatch. But just to watch that huge change in the environment in 10 days was astonishing. I was not prepared for that. I wasn't prepared to see the mom, the fur seal nursing her pup. I got really emotional in a way that I wasn't expecting. And to have that experience too with my daughter, who loves animals, and my husband there, it was just so special. These have just been really magical moments for us as a family.
I can already see your daughter's going to be like a vet when she grows up, or a zoologist or something, because of this trip.
I feel like that's true. Absolutely. I mean, she's been loving every moment of it. That was something that I was concerned about too when we were booking something like this. Is this going to be too long from our normal house in Las Vegas? Or is she going to be missing, our house? And she loves it. She's treated like a princess on board. She has just expanded so much, and I've watched her grow and her self-confidence build, and it's been fabulous.
That is so cool. So just a random question about the cruise. I mean, I've been on several cruises. Is there like a pool, and there's a bar, and the buffets, the whole deal?
Oh yes, yes. We're on Regent. They are amazing. They've been so good to us. We have everything is included. So we have specialty dining in here. That's all included. There is the multiple bars and pools. There's actually an infinity pool that's on the back of the ship that we really want to get in. That's going to be once we get to Australia and some of the more warmer climates, because New Zealand, I wasn't really having the idea that I wanted to have a pool day when we were in most of the parts of New Zealand. But it's fabulous. The ship is gorgeous. It feels like home. So this ship is smaller than some of the other giant ships that we've been on, but it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's also the most beautiful ship that I've ever been on. And so now it really is starting to feel like, oh, okay, let's just go down to our kitchen and get some coffee, right? Yes. And that switch happened for me, I think, in week 2. At first, you're kind of getting your bearings, you're kind of getting the lay of the land. And now it's just like, oh, okay, time to go get some coffee, time to go get a latte, time to do this. And so it might be really difficult for us to make the transition back to the real world because we've been so spoiled. 24 hours a day, whatever we want. Yeah.
So what is next? We know that Australia, and then you're going to be going to Asia. Are there any other, besides the tropical rainforest, really different weather areas that you'll be seeing than what we're used to in the US?
Yeah, some of it I think is desert. So we're going to be experiencing that, which I live in Las Vegas, so I am more used to desert climates. But even that, within those worlds, everything is very different. I didn't know, Antarctica is mostly desert as well, which I thought was fascinating. It is the driest place on Earth. So we're in Darwin. We're going to be seeing jumping crocodiles. So that's going to be interesting. I'm terrified of crocodiles. But we are going through multiple different types of tropical rainforests, as you mentioned, in Indonesia. Bali, we're going to have more different tropical experiences as well. And then Australia, our first time to Australia was when we landed in Sydney, and their weather, when we were there the first go around, when we just took off, is absolutely gorgeous. So I'm really looking forward to going back to Sydney and to Melbourne, because it was beautiful. And what you would think of as perfect weather, that was when we went to Sydney. So that's going to be the 13th, 14th for us, and then the 17th, and then around some of the warmer areas of Australia, and then we start heading up into Asia. And to be able to see Komodo dragons in the wild, and to see some of these incredible temples, and then be able to experience places like Singapore, which are so modern and so beautiful, and I've only seen in video and pictures so far. So really looking forward to it.
That is just so incredible. So let's say somebody is watching. Obviously, I know you're going to advise folks to do this, but how do you kind of get to that point where you're like, okay, I really need something different? Like I see my same neighborhood, we take our vacations to the same spot. Like, what is it that you guys were like, okay, we really need to do this?
I kept putting off taking a vacation. We kept doing this year after year. We should really go here, right? We should really do this. Wouldn't it be fun to do blank? And then you think, okay, we're going to do that summer of, 2023, summer of 2024, and you keep putting it off. And this was a way for us to be able to say, okay, we can work part of the time and then also have these adventures. That switch, I think, for us mentally allowed us to be able to do this, and allowed us to be able to do this for a longer period of time. And I would tell everybody, feel it out. We did this kind of as a trial run. So we started thinking, okay, is 6 weeks right? Is 7 weeks? What does it really look like? Because we wanted to see if we could really do it and if we loved it. And now I don't want to go. I'm looking at this and going, wow, we only have 3 weeks left.
I am so envious. I'm just sitting in Houston like, across the world, but we can live through you for now.
Oh, you can do it too. You can do it too one day. That's the fun thing about this is, I was in a newsroom for many, 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 many years. And so I know exactly how you feel. And now we're able to have these experiences. And so I think once you recognize that point in your life of, can I do this now? Can I do that? What do I want to change or maybe extend? Maybe talk the folks over in Houston to making a travel segment or a series about different weather systems around the world. Houston, Fox, hopefully you're listening. But, just different ways to be able to make it work for you and for your lifestyle. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would tell everybody is, if you notice that that moment is coming for you or you want to change anything, do it.
I love that so much. Well, Christiane Klein, we appreciate you joining us. I know it's really early where you are. You look so beautiful this early. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Here's the latest on the Arctic blast. We're looking at temperatures that could be the coldest in a year. They'll rival some of the low temperatures that we saw last week. We actually did get down to about 25, I think, in Brenham. And in Huntsville, our low last week, the lowest temperature we've had so far this year, 31 at Bush Intercontinental. Probably going to get colder than that this time. The difference this time is that we're adding in the potential for ice. So the location of the snow and the ice is still uncertain, but it still looks very likely. And the weather will be cold enough that we should have to protect all 4 of the P's, the people, pets, plants, and pipes. So what we know is that frigid air and very likely very harsh wind chills are heading our way beginning on Sunday. In fact, there will likely be a cold weather advisory issued at some point by the National Weather Service. It is going to be very blustery for the marathon and very cold for MLK Day. Snow is possible, yes, but it looks like our biggest concern is going to be ice. So fingers crossed on snow, and we definitely do not want ice. The exact location of snow and ice obviously is still difficult to determine this far out, along with the severity of ice on roadways. Right now, just keep in the back of your mind that the roads could be icy coming up on Tuesday and maybe Wednesday, so that could affect things like schools and so forth. This is a look at temperatures that are expected on Tuesday morning. Conroe could get down to the mid-20s, maybe even low 20s. Katy about 27, Houston about 29, roughly the same. Sugar Land about 33 in Galveston, and that may come along with the beginning of some light precipitation, which means that that's where we're looking for the potential for ice. The Futurecast jet stream shows a mild flow today and tomorrow, which will allow us to get sort of above average on our temperatures actually before the Arctic air dives down. And this is going to be a big deal across about 2/3 of the country. Extremely, extremely cold air. Here's the latest Futurecast that we have. This is the GFS computer model, which has been really backing off the precipitation. We're looking at Sunday right now for the marathon, which, like I said, is going to be cold, blustery, windy. Same thing with parades on the Martin Luther King holiday. And now the GFS is showing some rain. So we're going to take a look at the latest models coming up on Fox 26 News at noon. In the meantime, thanks so much for tuning in for our Forecasting with Friends. We'll see you same time here tomorrow.